Let me ask you a question. Have you ever looked at someone who seemed to have everything together? A successful career, a growing business, a loving family, a respected reputation, and then months later, you discovered they were quietly battling burnout, anxiety, emotional exhaustion, or complete loss of direction. I have seen that story more times than I can count. In fact, it's one of the biggest reasons people come to work with me. And here is what is interesting. Most of the clients don't come because they lack knowledge. They don't come because they are lazy. They don't come because they are not achieving results. They come because they have reached a point where their external success no longer matches their internal experience. From the outside, they are performing. On the inside, they are struggling. And here is the question that changed everything for me. What if the problem isn't that people need more motivation? What if they need recalibration? Because that is exactly what I help my clients do. Not simply perform better, but become internally coherent again. Today, I'm going to take you behind the scenes and show you how I help high capacity individuals recalibrate their internal system. Why traditional coaching often misses the real issue, and how internal coherence recalibration creates lasting emotional stability and decision clarity. By the end of this video, you'll understand why real transformation doesn't begin by changing your schedule. It begins by changing your internal operating system. Let us dive in. Let us discover more. One of the first things I tell every client is this. We're not going to begin with your habits. That usually surprises them. Because most personal development starts with behavior, such as wake up earlier, be more disciplined, manage your time better, improve your productivity. Those things matter. They are important in our lives, but they don't answer a more important question. The question is, why is your current behavior happening in the first place? Why? Imagine going to a doctor because you have a persistent headache. Instead of investigating the cause, the doctor simply gives you stronger painkillers every week. The pain might decrease temporarily, but the underlying issue remains. That's how many people approach personal growth. They treat symptoms. I help clients uncover causes. Because overwhelm, inconsistency, indecision, and emotional instability are often symptoms, not the root problem. The real issue is usually internal misalignment. That is where recalibration begins. That is where recalibration begins. Before you can recalibrate anything, you have to know what is out of alignment. You have to establish what is not aligned. Think about a pilot before takeoff. They don't simply start flying. They check every critical system. They check the fuel, they check navigation, they check communication, they check engine performance, because a small issue ignored on the ground becomes a major problem in the air. I approach my clients the same way. We begin with diagnosis, not assumptions. I help them examine 5 critical areas: their values, their identity, their priorities, their emotional patterns, and their behaviors. What usually surprises clients is this: their biggest struggle is rarely where they thought it was. Someone believes they are struggling with procrastination, but we discover they are actually struggling with fear of failure. That is what they are struggling with. Another believes they are overwhelmed by work, but we discover they are overwhelmed by unclear priorities and inability to establish healthy boundaries. The visible problem isn't always the real problem. Diagnosis changes everything. Here is where the real transforming begins. This is where the real transformation begins. Once we have identified the competing forces inside someone's life, we begin reducing internal conflict. This is one of the central principles of my internal coherence recalibration model. Because people usually don't fail from lack of effort. No. They fail because too many parts of them are pulling in different directions. One part wants success, another part wants rest. One part wants significance, another part wants peace. One part wants certainty, another part wants freedom. Imagine 8 people trying to steer the same boat. 8. Each has good intentions. Each is rowing hard, but they are all rowing in different directions. No wonder progress feels exhausting. My role isn't to make clients row harder. No, it is to help everyone row in the same direction. That is what internal coherence is, where your values, beliefs, emotions, priorities, identities, and actions begin supporting one another instead of competing against each other. Now, here is something many people don't expect. I simply don't help clients solve today's problems. That is not what I do. I help them build a new internal operating system. Think about upgrading the operating system on your phone. The apps may stay the same, but the phone performs differently because the system underneath has changed. That is what recalibration does. It changes the way people process life. Instead of reacting emotionally, they respond intentionally. Instead of chasing urgency, they prioritize what matters. Instead of depending on motivation, they build from identity. Instead of overthinking every decision, they develop internal clarity. One client once told me, the biggest change wasn't that my circumstances improved. The biggest change was that I stopped fighting myself. That's the goal, not perfection. The goal is internal agreement. Because when your internal system changes, external behavior naturally follows. Yes. So why does this approach produce more lasting results? Why? Why does it produce more lasting results? Because it works with human design instead of against it. Think about Captain America. His greatest strength wasn't simply courage. It was alignment. His beliefs, his decisions, his actions, his leadership, they all moved together. There wasn't constant internal negotiation. That is why people trusted him. The same principle applies to real life. High performers do not become sustainable because they develop endless discipline. No. They become sustainable because they reduce internal friction. They reduce internal friction. Every unresolved conflict drains energy. Every contradiction consumes attention. Every misaligned priority creates unnecessary stress. When those internal conflicts begin disappearing, decision making becomes easier. Emotional stability increases and consistency improves. Clarity returns. Not because life became easier, because internal resistance became smaller. Let me leave you with this. Most people come looking for better habits, better routines, better productivity, better performance, and those things matter. But they are rarely where lasting transformation begins. Real transformation begins when your internal system becomes coherent. When your values support your priorities. When your priorities support your decisions. When your decisions support your identity. When your emotions are processed instead of suppressed. That is why I don't simply help clients become more productive. I don't. I help them become more integrated. Because integrated people don't need to fight themselves every day just to move forward. They move from clarity instead of confusion. From stability instead of survival. From alignment instead of pressure. And that is what the Internal Coherence Recalibration Model is ultimately designed to accomplish. Not creating people who can tolerate more stress, no, but for creating people who no longer generate unnecessary stress from internal conflict. Remember this, your greatest breakthrough won't come from adding another productivity system. No. It will come from rebuilding the internal system that is driving every decision you make. Because your internal world changes everything built around it. Yeah, the internal system changes and everything built upon it begins to change as well. That is the power of recalibration. If this message resonated with you, comment here below with the word recalibrate and tell me which part of your internal system do you think needs the most attention right now? Is it your values, your identity, your priorities, your emotions, or behaviors? And if you are ready to experience your own internal coherence recalibration and build a life marked by emotional stability, decision clarity, and sustainable performance, subscribe to the channel. Because success isn't about changing what you do. It is about transforming the person who is doing it.